I would like to introduce Terri Zeman from the St. Louis Biofuels Club, and I'm from Essen. And Terry's going to be talking to you, but I just want to let you know that what we are going to be talking about is small-scale methanol recovery as we have worked on it in St. Louis. So
we have till 7.
We're representing our experience, and our experience does not cover all of your questions. So, for example, we haven't yet gotten into flash evaporators. I'm really sorry, but we haven't done that. On the other hand, we have gotten into falling film evaporators, and we will be talking about that today. I personally can't answer this top question, but we can try to talk about it here in the room. Maybe some people know about it, but I don't. Do you?
No, and I didn't bring the book that I usually refer to that we have.
Okay. We will talk about heating sources. We can talk a bit about molecular sieves. Even though we're not really using them, we have members who are interested in them and we've talked about them. We can talk about this. We don't have exact figures to give you for time and energy and ROI, return on investment, but we can kind of talk about that. In fact, that's something, we both have kilowatts, and we are going to work more on calculating exact what our costs are, and have better information about that. And we will be posting our presentation on the conference website, the same as we did last year. I think we can talk about pre-wash too. So just to set up your expectations. Terry, take it away.
You know what, we might want to just set those on this table. Might be easier for
okay.
here. So in June of 2005 is when Maud and I first started getting serious about trying to figure out methanol recovery, and I think it had sort of been our plan all along to work on it. And we've listed out some reasons why people might be interested in methanol recovery, and the first being that it's our most costly component of the biodiesel making process. And although Maud and I were both very concerned about that, really our main interest, I believe I can speak for both of us, was the second one, for the environmental reasons and because it's the right thing to do. We both were concerned about venting to the atmosphere and safety issues for our own selves, our own personal selves and the people around us in our homesteads where we're making the fuel. And for our pocketbook. I mean, yeah, you can't deny that it's, I mean, our cost right now is about $2.35 a gallon. It was up to $7 a gallon over the winter time for methanol in our region, although neither of us actually had to pay that because we're recovering our methanol. We were able to use our own recovered methanol over the winter. And so we were like, okay, where can we get a safe, standardized, proven methanol recovery system? And neither one of us had ever built a still or learned anything about condensing. We had another member, Sam Lay, who may or may not show up over the weekend. He lives here locally now.
Woo, Sam!
Yeah. And he drew for me, and I wish I have this piece of paper, but I didn't bring it with me. He drew for me a picture of how to make a counterflow condenser. And I had no experience, but then he's sort of the soldering and plumbing stuff and whatever, and I was like, okay, Sam, I don't really know if I'm going to be able to do anything with this, but I'll see what I can do. And he wrote some little notes down and told me how long did it have to be and this wide or whatever. And I said, that was like in November of 2004. And so in June of 2005, I finally put that one together exactly to his specifications. And you can tell I don't really solder a lot. And because I had never done it before, I did it exactly like he said, instead of using my own intuition to do it better. For instance, the thermometer sticking straight up. It did not occur to me when Sam drew his picture that I did not know how was I going to read that thermometer.
I thought you were taller.
So the second, am I getting ahead of myself? Okay, so we kind of worked on this and brainstormed on it, built this one, and I will be getting ahead of myself if I keep going on the next slide. So hopefully today we're going to learn some basic distillation processes. And this one has turned out to be very simple. Some fundamental safety requirements. Maud and I are try to be, and I think that we both are, very safety conscious, and we try to be very good example setters, at least in our St. Louis community. And I don't really have an online presence, but Maud does, and to the best of my knowledge, she...
The safety Nazi.
but we both are. It's just that I'm not on, I can't get online. So, and then we went through some steps to developing a standardized methanol recovery system, and it has been now a year later, and we did work on this a little bit more, but what Maud's going to talk about is actually so exciting that we might not work on this part anymore. We might just go to this new thing. But so a year ago, we're still on pot stills, and Dave Smith developed for us this 10-man 5M that we use in the 5Ms are a mighty magical methanol making machine, because it is truly all 5 of those things. And then Maud, based on that design, made Tank Girl. And we have some pictures that show them eventually. So the basic process, heat the solution in the pot still. And you're trying to drive off a vapor, and there's this process thing called the latent heat of vaporization, and that's where the magic part comes in, because it is truly magical. You have to be putting energy into the pot still and increasing the temperature to drive a vapor off. And methanol vaporizes at about 149, 152 is usually what we see, and it will entrain as a vapor all these other components, and that'll affect I know I'm going fast, but I'll go back in a minute. It trains all these other things, and that changes the temperature of the vapor. And we're going to condense the vapors and collect the condensation. So, back to the heating solution. When I first started doing this in June of 2005, I was using my apple seed processor to try to condense from. And we know better now, and we don't recommend that. And there were two problems with that. First of all, it did not occur to me when I first tried to do this that I couldn't pump. And so I was using it as though I was using it as a processor. So I had the pump on, which was just entraining the vapor back into the liquid. So I was never getting a vapor coming off because my vapor was just mixing back into the liquid as I was pumping it. And I had no concept of how hot the pot still had to get in order to drive the vapor off. So I'm thinking, methanol vaporizes at 152, I just got to heat to 152. No, nothing. I mean, by this time then I realized to turn the pump off. Nothing happened. 172, nothing happened. 185, I'm getting a little nervous. 200 degrees, shut it down. I don't know what's going wrong, it doesn't work. And then in the meantime, they've developed this Tin Man creation for us, which is substantially safer for us to use. And there is a picture coming up. And it's got a big thermometer in front. It gets up to 300 plus degrees in the pot. Yeah, do you have a question? Or, I'm sorry. Before you're actually driving a vapor off at 152. And the more the vapor is removed, the higher the pot goes. So and because of this latent heat of vaporization process, you have to have energy in to the pot still in order to lose energy, basically, or change energy to the vapor to come off to the other side of the condensed vapor. So getting my brain around that, I was like, oh, light bulb went on, and okay, this is what we gotta do. So then our safety things, proper ventilation, lighting, and communication. Very, very true. You got to be able to see what's going on. Communicate. Dave and I now have a notebook, and he made a little spreadsheet for us to check off all of our safety procedures, and I'm sure Maud does something similar. Gloves, goggles, the apron. We all keep fire extinguishers very handy, a water source, and spill control, very conscious of all of that. And we do all keep I keep beer as opposed to ever.
I keep beer also.
But the same concept.
It's a beer town.
Because methanol poisoning, I mean, it really is acute alcohol poisoning, and you will feel all dizzy and woozy. And not that I've personally experienced that, but another person I make biodiesel with has. And then someone in our group did just recently, emailed what are these symptoms. It's alcohol poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
So basic components. Boiler. We use and I guess Tank Girl also is some sort of expansion tank from a hot water heating system, which in Tin Man's case had valve fitting things on them already, right?
We have enough ports, we'd have to add a monitor.
Right, and in Maud's case, she had someone cut and weld on some ports and things, but it's nothing fancy.
Small compressor tank also will work.
Yeah, just some kind of tank with metal thick enough to cut into and weld onto. The counterflow condenser, and so then in the meantime, Dave, appalled by my soldering skills, put together the second condenser with nice little angled
And it
things.
used 1-inch pipe, and it seems to.
Yes, and he used a thicker jacket. So, am I getting ahead of myself again? So the counterflow condenser, there's a 1/2-inch copper that goes the whole way through and comes out here on the bottom. It's got these fittings threaded to it. And then there's a water jacket around the outside. And the water just flows on this outside jacket, and it flows, the counterflow, because it flows counter to the direction that the vapor is going to be going through. And this is another thing that Maud and I did not get right off. Sam said, oh, the water has to go this way. And he gave us this crazy scientific explanation about how it was going to carry off the energy and blah, blah, and blah, blah. You know what it is? It's as simple as it doesn't fill up if you go top to bottom. You have to go bottom to top for it to fill the water up. Otherwise, it just flows right back out. So it's really not that complicated. And then Dave put, of course, the thermometer so we can see it. And he's put a second port for a thermometer for the jacket water, and we just never got that far. We from time to time put a thermometer in the water, but really we just feel the water and is it cool or is it warm? So you can get kind of fancier, but you really don't need to be. I mean, both of these have the connects that can go onto the side of the tin man or whatever we're using at the time. And the vinyl tubing with the cap that goes, and Maud and I both try to collect directly into a methanol carboy that we're going to be using for the condenser. So we're reducing our transfer of the methanol around. Well, wait a minute. Are you going to take a picture like somebody took last year where it looks like I wet my pants? With the flash. I did not like that.
I'm sorry.
These Photoshop that are, but actually I'm standing the same way. It was the shadow of one leg. Oh, I know.
We noticed it.
Immediately. I didn't tell anybody about last year's conference.
You had a perfect model with it last year.
Except for those I was doing my VO light. Maud was talking.
But you can fix that picture that's on the website now, couldn't you?
I can now.
Yeah.
You need to do it
I will. I
because
didn't
Terry
realize
would like to
that,
send people to that site.
Barrel water. Okay, and so for our heat sink, we're each and all using a 55-gallon barrel of water. And in our case, the barrel is actually open on the top. It was an old barrel that we used for spill contamination. And the ports from the condenser just run in and out. We have a little submersible pump, and it also is in a picture that's coming up. And it's not...
It's enough water that we don't feel we need to cool it down.
Correct, it's not, since we've cut it, it's not 55 gallons, but it's like 40 gallons instead. It does evaporate, so from time to time we top it off and fill it up. And we do notice when it's evaporated down a couple gallons, it definitely changes the temperature of the jacket water, gets hotter faster, and takes longer to cool the vapors. In Maud's case, it's a sealed 55-gallon barrel, right? And then
Yeah, I have mice in my garage, even though my whole backyard is filled with feral cats that belong to my alcoholic neighbor, the animal hoarder. And they do not bother themselves to eat the mice. The mice just come into my garage at will, and I have to have a closed barrel so I don't have little mouse bodies all over the place floating in my water.
And well, we had sort of experiment somewhat with, because this is a good way to heat water. I mean, it's also a good way to cool vapor, but the opposite is that it's a good way to warm water. So we've also experimented with using that warm water then as a wash water for the biodiesel process, and then also for cleaning the rags. Somebody was talking the other day about cleaning the rags in glycerin, well, then with that warm water. And so in the past, although we're not set up for it now, I've collected rainwater for this barrel of water, and so I'll swap it out. This water gets warm, I use it as a wash water, or as to wash the rags, and refill it then with rainwater, because I was at that time collecting rainwater. Collection vessel.
Wet roll. This pipe, has it been painted, or is that galvanized?
No, it's been painted. It's just silver paint, yeah.
Okay.
No, that's a good question. No, they like, we have a very color coordinated lab in this shop. So collection vessel, we both try to use something that goes to a carboy that we then use for our, yes sir.
Terry, back to the boiler. What's heating the boiler?
Water heater element. So in our case, it's now a 1650 watt element, although we were using a 1500 watt element for a long time on 110, and are used back
I'm
on
115
110.
on 110.
Okay, but it started on 220, and that's a little too much. It's too hot too fast.
I burned up a lot of them.
It leads to cavitation because it's real hot right around there, so you get the bubbles forming, and it would arc the element. So, yes, sir.
Yes, I was just wondering, so why use a different tank? Why not just use a water heater tank? What?
Oh, I did skip over that. So the two problems, I was mixing. And the second thing is you have to bypass the thermostat, and that's just not good protocol to set as an example. So it's not that you can't do that, that's just not good practice. So our idea was to set up a separate entity for condensing the methanol vapors. And of course, it doesn't have a thermostat on it either, but it makes you mentally more aware that that thing over there is kind of dangerous, the heat could run away, and there's no controls on it. Now, we've been working on a way to control it. Ideally, we would have a temperature sensor that would sense not the pot temperature, but the vapor temperature. And when we go to about 165, is that what you good? Yeah, for the vapor, which is not pure methanol at that point. It's entraining a lot of other stuff, but it's pure enough for us. Our methanol test is purer than what we buy from Lidl and from Chemisphere.
How pure?
And what's the problem with pumping though?
What's the problem with
What was the problem with pumping? like
You get the vapor, you mix the vapor right back into your liquid.
Yeah, there seems to be no need for it.
It doesn't come
No,
out.
you really just want it to boil.
Oh,
You don't want it to mix. You want it to just do its convection boiling thing and drive the vapor up and all. If you're mixing, you're putting liquid back down on the vapor and just mixing the vapor right back in.
It's
So,
like cooling the vapor down.
they're cool, yeah, exactly, turning it back into liquid and then training it back into liquid.
And we're talking glycerol right now, by the way. We started out with glycerol. And it may be that there's a different experience with biodiesel. So remember, what we're talking about right now is glycerol.
Yeah, I guess
And
I
it
didn't.
gets very thick after you heat it for 6 hours, so you don't really want it in your processor.
You would, yeah, if you're, not that you couldn't set for yourself up a dedicated Appleseed type contraption for filling it, but then also you drain all your sight tubes, everything up, because you're getting it real hot. So none of that vinyl tubing and, yes, sir.
Now, so does it stay thick? Is it like a molasses?
Yes, but
The
he's
best
getting
thing is
ahead
to drain
of
it while
it.
it's warm, I'm sorry.
We're getting to So Maud and I last year thought, okay, wait a minute, collection vessel, carboy vent to exterior. So in Maud's case, she runs her vents through her processor. So any vapor that gets passed will condense into there and just, be a little extra, but it's drops, if anything. Dave and I run it from our collection vessel into a glass jar, so we can see if any vapor comes through the glass jar, and then to the outside world. And your processor then goes to the outside world. So instead of a glass jar, she's using her whole processor. And then we had thought we would set this up for a vacuum pump, and we kind of toyed with that and talked to people about it, and it really was going to complicate things, and it just didn't really seem that necessary. When we were talking about the controls and you were talking about the safety issues, John, you would want a temperature sensor, back to that for a second, that is reading the vapor temperature. So when it spikes past 165 is when you want to kill the whole operation down. And the pot temperature could be anywhere depending on how much glycerol, it's going to be more than 300 degrees Fahrenheit most likely. But you can't say for sure what temperature it's going to be because it's going to depend on how much methanol you had in there and the volume of it and your water counterflow and condensing rate. So we actually never ended up experimenting with the vacuum pump. And the thing that Maud's going to talk about is so exciting that I don't think we're going to even get
Is
to
this a
the...
question you want me to wait till later? But
Oh,
I mean, what are we doing to the glycerol, the glycerin? Besides removing the methanol, is it becoming a solid block? What does it
If you use the
harden like
sodium-
sugar? Does it,
You got probably with the sodium.
If you use the sodium, it's thick to start with
Right.
at room temperature, and it's not solid, but it's pretty close to a solid. For the potassium base, it's as thick as molasses or even thicker, and it's real sweet smelling, real dense, hard to pour. So like what he was saying, it's methanol, that's keeping it real liquid. Once you've taken the methanol out, and of course you've reduced the volume greatly too. So.
On mine, sometimes I've noticed that when I empty the tank roll, I will get little caramelized chunks out. So what's just right there by the heating element, I think, can get kind of burnt a little bit. Because it's sugar, it's alcohol. So in my case, I'm using KOH, so my glycerol is ending up being the sole way that my best friend Carl heats his house. He has a wood stove and he heats exclusively with my glycerol. And it happens that his consumption and my production match each other really well. But if I ever scale up, I'm going to be in trouble because I'm going to have to deal with an excess of glycerol.
And that's
How
something
does
we
he
could
burn it?
In a wood stove, he makes little logs out of wax paper cartons and shredded paper. Because, we're in the city, so sawdust is harder to find than shredded paper, and shredded paper works real well. He's experimented also with burning just the liquid right in a cake pan that I gave him. And that's a little bit more risky, so he decided he wasn't going to go that way anymore. Okay.
I've heard that when you burn food biodiesel glycerol like that, or even with methanol removed, then you're creating a gas called petroleum.
Yes, it is.
Dangerous.
It is. And that's why the only person, I have to be honest, that I would give my glycerol to for this purpose is Carl. Because Carl can be relied upon not to have a leaking, poorly ventilated wood stove. And I don't know about other people, but I do know about him. So actually our club has an intention this summer. We actually would like to form a glycerol co-op. We don't have a co-op, Our club is a bunch of individuals. But this thing about proper treatment and handling and disposal of glycerol is a big problem for hobbyists as well as commercial plants. And so we're not going to ever be producing enough to be having our little carload somewhere that we're collecting into for years. So our intention We've made some preliminary investigations with our wastewater treatment plant, and we've learned that a couple of the plants in our area have anaerobic digesters. And it happens to be that it's not the plant that both of our sewers empty into, but another one that's farther away. So we're hoping that this summer we can get a co-op going and give our stuff to that guy.
It's kind of a range delivery or something. On a
Yeah.
certain day, they'll take it, and we'll go to the other club members and just truck it all up to Florissant.
Right.
Wherever it is. Did you want to say any more about the glycerin removal, or do we have, is there a slide coming up? Where we
Oh,
have
there's so many pictures, you gotta get into the
Okay.
pictures.
No, we will, I mean, glycerin is a problem, so maybe at the end of condensing, we can talk more about what we
Yeah.
do to get rid of our glycerin. But so this is the schematic Dave drew of the tin man before you put them together. And then there he is without his clothes on, out in the yard for a test run. And then eventually we insulated him, oh, I forgot to say this. We insulated him, and he was temporarily in my garage for a while, and I would have to stand up on this countertop to fill him. I think that there's a picture, a couple more down that shows how we fill him. But with the old condenser on him in that picture, and then the new condenser in that picture, and the water barrel is behind him, it doesn't want to show up. In this case, he's not actually connected to the water, but that was just for demonstration. And then tank girl with the Maud had another club member, Corey, made the fittings and stuff for Maud on there, welded them on there. And then, so there's Maud's sealed barrel, and that shows Maud's that Maud is very lucky to have to use for that. That whole latent heat of vaporization and adding the power thing, you don't necessarily need full strength on your element that whole time, you just need energy in so you can get energy out. And in my case, or our case, it's just plugged in and it's cranking on and heating up. But in Maud's case, she's able to scale back the voltage or the wattage, whichever it is.
Hopefully the water. But see, that has to do with ROI. That's one of our topics we wanted to touch on a little bit here. I'm lucky because Carl is a dumpster diver at a university. He's a professor of geology. And so whenever they move departments, he's in that dumpster looking out for stuff for me. And he found Variax during one big move, and I am so fortunate because when I'm operating that 1500 watt element, after I achieve vaporization, I can dial back the amount of power that I'm using. And I'm literally dialing it back to like 55%. This thing has a scale where you kind of have to guess what you're really using, but it says 55, and I think that might mean 55%. And so I'm actually cutting my power consumption pretty significantly because I have that control. The way other people have to obtain that control is more complicated. What a lot of home distillers do is have two small heating elements, and then when they first are ramping up their heat, they'll actually operate with both of those heating elements functioning. And then later on, when they're ready to ramp down and just maintain the temperature, because as Terri was telling you, our pots will go up to 350. That's not because we're adding heat. It's the same heat. So let's say we ramp up with 3,000 watts and then cut back to 1,500. We can maintain the heat with just 1,500 watts or less.
Just maybe question, comment, I'm not sure. I mean, effectively what you have is a rheostat, but it's a high-grade, real professional
What's
rheostat.
nice about it is it doesn't throw away the excess heat or excess
Right, but you're dialing the
heat.
wattage down, so.
Right.
And I've heard that you can buy from like hardware supply stores, a router speed controller,
Right.
something like that. Have you had
Yes,
experience
I've heard
with
of that
those?
too. We haven't experimented with that
Okay.
yet. I don't know how they are at handling that wattage. We'll just have to find out.
Yeah,
But yes, Harbor Freight has them in fact.
right.
And I wanted to make sure and point out.
The other thing that we can also consider is, another thing is a stove, what were you looking at?
Your MSD and your evidence.
Isn't that good? Always ready for the evidence camera. I live in a city, you know.
Did you make those, did you make those stickers?
Oh,
She
yeah.
has them
Good
for us
on
to
you.
download on our.
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
our
Nice.
website.
Yeah.
Our dance mode.
Wait, what was I gonna say? I can't remember. I'm sorry. That's all right.
Rheostats and Harbor Freight.
Harbor
Stoves.
Freight.
Stoves.
Stove! Yes, stove controller. That's another choice. So I figure if we find out that the router controller doesn't work for us, it can't handle it, then I think what we'll do is look into stove controllers, like ovens. Because those have actual numbers on them. So that would be kind of handy.
What? back here.
Hi.
Would it be possible to use a thermostat, like I haven't really pulled apart an electric water heater in a long time, but we use gas ones. But with an electric water heater, does it have the copper alert tube temperature meter for its own thermostat?
Well, the problem with thermostats, Greg, is that they actually have such a latency to them that it will kill your vaporization.
Because I was thinking if you put that thermostat on your discharge for your methanol vapor, if you're picking up like 170 or whatever you want, or 165, you can set your thermostat to that. So as it builds up temperature beyond, as soon as
Okay,
it
so
goes over
you're
that.
back to, yeah, the safety feature for the temperature.
I see.
But then it controls the heater element. So you plug the sucker in and it just heats up until it gets to 160 and it's running full tilt. And when it does, it shuts the burner off.
Yeah, the trick to that one is to make it shut off and not come back on again when it cools down. That's the only problem. So we actually didn't get that far in working on control for the Pomodoro, but that is the complexity of it, is that more than one thing has to happen when you control that heating element.
And it really does stop condensing when you cut the heat off. You think it's still boiling in there or whatever, but as soon as you take the energy away, it stops within seconds. You don't see it up the condenser anymore. So in this case, on the Tin Man, using the opaque collection vessel, but we've got the clear tube and then a little glass jar off to the side. So we can see if any vapor is skipping past them. So if our water got too hot or there's some other kind of malfunction, we can see it and do something to correct it. And then in Maud's case, first you can see through, she's got this clear line for the vent. And in both cases, it says, in both cases we keep some ice or something, no, blue ice in the freezer to cool it off. Although we don't have this happen anymore, in the beginning, from time to
I
time.
don't have it either.
Yeah, I mean, maybe once it happened. But you'll see vapor starting to sneak up here, which lets you know that it's not condensing, of course, from the condenser like it's supposed to be, but sneaking past the condenser. So we would keep blue ice or the packs on hand to just cool it down, and it only takes a minute or not even to correct.
What was that curly guy wrapped around there?
Maud has this
Well,
fabulous.
that would be some dumpster dived computer wire.
yeah.
You know, in the olden days, monitors used to have coiled wire like telephones. Remember how telephones used to have wires on the handsets?
You're dating yourself.
It keeps the tubing from collapsing.
Right, so to keep the tube from collapsing, the tube is flimsy and it'll pinch.
Yeah.
So as to keep the tube open.
She's got that set up on the So, in the Tin Man's case, there's a little fountain pump from Harbor Freight sunk in there that works really well. It's not the very cheapest model, it's the second model up, and it works just fine. I used the Volkswagen Hubcap as an additional heat radiator for it to fall in there. And in Maud's case, oh, she's got the little bulkhead fitting thing that she and Carl made on them. Where did you, that idea is posted on?
That idea is on the web. It's for people who don't feel like spending $50 on a bulkhead fitting. It's kind of a high-risk bulkhead fitting, but you can make it for under $2. It's made out of electrical parts for PVC pipe. And so I just make sure to try not to budge them, because what's defective about the design is there's not a whole lot of lip on the inside. But I have these little cheesy bulkhead fittings on my tank farm. I have 4 55-gallon drums as my grease collection place. And I guess it's been about a year and a half and I haven't had a problem.
The electrical conduit stuff, it's
Yeah.
plastic?
Yeah. Just screwed together and plenty of caulking. I think the hydrostatic pressure helps to hold it in place, but any kind of lateral blow to it would be disastrous.
So our basic procedure, we load the boiler with glycerol, heat it up, and like Maud pointed out earlier, for ramping up the temperature, you could put 2 elements in there and then just kill one of them. It takes the Tin Man an hour to an hour and a half to heat up the temperature to where it kind of condensing starts, or vaporizing starts. And in your case,
That's a little faster than that, I think, but I'm smaller. My full batch is 15 gallons, so I'm a little smaller than you are, I think. I'm not?
no, we did 12 gallons,
We
but I
did
thought you
kind of
were.
guess on the hour and a half, we thought it was.
How long
Could
is
be a
it?
little-
About an hour to an hour and a half to get
Could be
a
a little-
12 gallons of
glycerol, right. And that was another thing in the beginning that we took a while to figure out whether or not it was working, because again, I didn't realize it would take so long to heat up enough to run this vapor off. And so we would shut down the experiment, not only when it was 200 degrees, but when it was an hour later and it hadn't started yet.
Yeah.
Start pumping the I started pumping my coolant right away. I know in here somewhere it says, oh, when it starts getting to that temperature, turn it on. I guess it's step number 3, but I turn them on together, just in case, just so it's on, so I know it's on.
Terry, how much vapor space do you have at the top? above the glycerol?
Maybe 2 gallons worth of, so it's a tall, skinny thing. I think in his jacket, so you can't see them. Oh, okay.
Try to
It's pointing
make
over here.
like 3.
Right about there is where the 12-gallon mark is, where we fill them up to.
That seems to work out about right.
Yes. In the case that I overfilled him once, it spits it out the condenser. So you know immediately that it's
Fans quite a bit then.
yeah. Well, but it's boiling. I mean, it's a roaring boil once it gets going. I mean,
It dances
moves
around on
and-
its stand.
Yeah, I mean, he's, in his current location, he's, yeah, I mean, it does. And neither of these pictures show it, but he really should be anchored to a wall or something.
It was really a prototype, and we never went beyond redesigning it with all the bells and whistles.
How is it that at a roaring boil, though, you're not boiling off any water that's in
Well,
there?
you are. It's in training water as well, which is why it's only 95% pure.
Are you guys doing pre-wash?
Well, no, and in that slide, let's get it back.
So if you're doing pre-wash, you have to back it off to avoid getting too much water into your.
No, that wouldn't really help you, because remember, it's the temperature of the vapor that is controlling this thing.
Yeah, the
So,
water,
what you really need to do is avoid superheating it. If you superheat it, then you're jamming more of that water into your vapor. So, that's why the ability to ramp up is kind of nice.
On one of the slides it says, oh, when we get back to St. Louis, we'll experiment 5% pre-wash.
I think I took that off the slide.
Okay.
No, I actually did do an experiment with a 5% pre-wash, but I decided that the 5% pre-wash wasn't important to me, and I didn't work with it long enough to get good at it.
So this is a regular pot still? This is not a
Yeah.
refractive pot?
Correct.
We both recover about 25% volume of the glycerol back as methanol. And that's apparently what we expect to get. And Dave and I were doing some math, and you were doing some math the other day, and it seems like we're getting pretty good return on methanol. So for us, every third batch is free methanol, more or less. Although we mix it in half and half. Yes, sir.
All right, so how much methanol are you doing a single stage?
Yes,
And how much?
22%. So we bumped it up a little bit over 2. And so actually we get 31%. Yeah, so we actually are getting closer to 31% methanol.
So the 25% is 25%
Of the
methanol compared to the volume of the original glycerol. So if you start with 12 gallons, you're getting 3 gallons of methanol, 95% here.
it makes fine that we use just recovered methanol.
And we were nervous about that.
No problem.
We did this as well, and you know, and I hate to say it, we're just in a different place. This is great for homebrew stuff, and I really congratulate, I love what you guys do. Unfortunately, on the commercial side, when we tried with just a pot still, the 95% won't work for us. Because we don't get the conversion that we need. And even mixing it back in, which our Denton plant was doing, we need like 99.5.
You are going to be
Get to
so
that.
happy when you hear our new
Yeah,
stuff.
I gotta finish up here so much, 25%, blah, blah.
All stuff.
Oh, yeah. But it's real simple, so it's not necessarily like that. But we still loaded from the top. We always intended to add a pump, kind of like how Maud's is set up. He's plumbed, I guess it's this line.
Yeah, I
goes in the
usually
bottom.
just load my gravity, but I
From
guess
her.
plumb so that I can actually plug it in from the top.
Right, so that is a weakness for the Tin Man. Pressure gauge is just for show, although from time to time we have left them.
You don't need it, that was more for just our experiments. but
Right.
it Never moved,
Blah, blah, blah.
unless you leave the bounce flow.
That may or may not. Yes, that's when you fill him, unfortunately in the Tin Man's case, he's so tall and skinny in the funnel up there, you can't see, but there's a funny little copper straw that Dave had to make to release the air out, because when you're filling him in, he bursts, you know? And this is glycerin, of course, with methanol still in it, and I should probably have long sleeves on and all that, but vent over here, we can leave this open a little bit, but it'll burp the glycerin out that way. But you have to close the valve to the condenser. So then heat the boiler up with the condenser open. So you have to remember, and that's on our checklist now, to open the condenser back up. Ramp up temperature of glycerol stick, yes. He's got, we put him on a timer sometimes, but we try to always be home while the timer's on. Like we were talking about the safety thing, walking away from things and having them possibly come back on and off. On our checklist is always to pull the thing out that turns him back on, so that only the little lever that turns him off is present. And he
Yeah,
does.
no, it's 6 hours.
It's
Just
6
very-
hours.
very
I mean, it
comfortable.
takes a
Consistent.
long
Just turn it on
time.
for 6 hours and we try to be doing something in the shop at the same time. But
Come back
we don't have
in.
the attention or anything.
Yeah, and you can see we this is 12 liters on that one. We've since then got new jugs that we use, graduated all in 2-liter increments, so that we can, so we have an idea of how far along he is, we can see how full it is. We almost always get 14 liters back out of our 12 gallons. I hate going back for some liters, to be honest, but, right, and then mods. So we said all this already.
Yeah, you might want to skip that.
Yeah, cut back, the Variac, very nice. Mods, set up the coil. So, secret of success, proper sizing. There is this crazy math formula for length and thickness and rate flow for the condensers that Sam Lay had set me up with in the beginning, and really I don't know how important anything is. The pump can only pump so fast. You've only got such a flow rate as long as you've got enough volume of water to pump through. None of that really seemed to matter, but we did follow the little formula for the lengths and the wattage. And the wattage for the element was part of that formula as well. Size heat sink says, okay, so we talked about all that. And we were going to add, we still didn't mean to add controls, safety features to turn them off. I like the idea maybe of the stove thing with or the thermostat. Shutting off the element, close the collection vessel, and scale up. And then hopefully, yep, we're going to get some more.
All right.
You clap after the whole. I can hold it if you want.
Well, let me talk a little bit first.
Oh, you got 1,500 watt element, 6 hours. Yeah. 10 kilowatt hour.
Okay, this year's contribution is we wanted to start working on recovering methanol from biodiesel. I personally did not have any idea how much methanol might be in the biodiesel. And in fact, I think everybody here knows, I'm a low volume producer. I live in the city, I ride a bicycle, I do all kinds of things to avoid driving. So I really think I probably only make about 12 batches a year. That's the reality of how often I process. But what I really want to do is be environmentally conscientious, as Terri pointed out. And so I really wanted to start recovering methanol from the biodiesel, regardless of how little it was, just because I wanted to be able to do it. So I learned from looking on InfoPop that Graham Lamming was saying that he was getting back about 3% by volume of biodiesel in methanol when he was using his technique. And so I thought, okay, well that's a good kind of guideline. We'll hope that maybe we can do as well. And one of the things that really influenced me on not trying to use the Tank Girl Tin Man design was because I had a visit up to Peoria and I got to meet Gary Canuta, the guy who's the chemical engineer who wrote the book. And I was telling him what we do, and he was laughing and gagging and just kind of being kind of appalled. But his message to me was, use your fuel fast because a lot of the stuff you're doing is oxidizing. And I kind of took that to heart. So what that meant to me was boiling my biodiesel for 6 hours was not a good choice because oxidation is the first step of polymerization. If I oxidize my fuel, I am setting the stage for a polymerization to occur. So that's what led us to thinking about what could we do that's not a pot still and recover methanol from biodiesel. And that is a falling film evaporator. I know, Rachel, that there are people working on kind of a Homescale flash evaporator, and we just haven't gone in that direction yet. So we're kind of exploring this approach, because it kind of is playing into what is already a strength for us, because we understand these condensers, and we know how to set that kind of thing up. I have a feeling that we might get interested in those flash evaporators too. But one of the things as a club that we always try to do is come up with something that can be handled by someone who's not very technical, somebody who doesn't have a lot of money. So we really are hobbyists, and trying to make safe choices for people who are hobbyists too. So that's kind of what guides us in the directions that we tend to go. I am aware that there are a number of people, Del Martin down in Houston, I was hoping that he would come to this conference this year. Del has been recovering methanol with his apple seed, and I know several people here at the conference are doing that as well. As Terry mentioned previously, we don't like that idea from a safety perspective, because you would have to be either smart enough and capable enough to put a switch on your thermostat and remember to use it so you can defeat your thermostat when you're recovering methanol, and then take that defeat off when you're processing as usual. But we didn't want to set things up that way, so that's moved us toward this falling film evaporator that we're currently investigating. And this is what it looks like. This thing that I have with us, I'll pull it up in a second, Terry, but let me explain first what it's doing, because we debated taking off the insulation. Terry very kindly transported this in her Jetta as a third passenger in the back seat. And we just decided that leaving the insulation on was a better choice. We thought it would make it here. Because I've got the condenser soldered on, so it's a little bit flimsy. I didn't want to add a union because I was trying to stay away from weight at this point. It's kind of delicate there. So at any rate, here's how it works. There's a little chamber at the top of it, and this is a 1-inch copper pipe, by the way. There's a chamber at, I have this monitoring. There's a chamber at the top that the biodiesel can flow into and pass across a spreader. It's like an upside-down funnel. And now you are going to say to me, Maud, how did you fabricate that upside-down funnel? And the answer is, I went to Lowe's with a piece of my 1-inch pipe and stuck everything that you could stick into that thing and looked at how big the gap was. And the thing that I found that had a little tiny skinny gap was an air chamber. Do you know what that is? It's to keep your water pipes from hammering. An air chamber is about this long, and it's very beautiful. They're actually gorgeous. And nice chunk of copper. Well, it is. It's beautiful. I'm actually planning to use the piece I cut off as a little bud vase, because it's just that beautiful. Oh, anyway, it's kind of spun with me. So what I did was I chopped off the top of an air chamber, which has a 1/2-inch fitting at the top, and that became my upside-down funnel. Now, Dave has already discovered that when you take a different 1-inch pipe to Lowe's and look at other fittings, you can do this more cheaply if you have soldering skills with reducers and other fittings, reducers and couplers. When I was at Lowe's, the reducers weren't fitting into my pipe.
I took it to Home Depot.
Oh, that's right. So, anyhow, what happens then is the fuel is falling down the very walls of this 1-inch pipe. Now, how do we know that? Sadly, we don't. We think it's falling down the very walls. We hope it's falling down the very walls. But how we're trying to encourage it to do that as slowly as possible is we have coiled some welding wire. What kind of wire was that, Dave?
It's a copper-coated steel MIG wire, but in the future, if we had it, we would probably go with the stainless. But
yeah. So Terry wound the wire around a 3/4-inch pipe, and she wound it around densely.
So we made a spring.
Yeah, for a distance of about 6 inches, all packed together, and then carefully spread it out in a nice springy spiral. And then we introduced it into the 1-inch pipe and let her rip. And at that point, we didn't have it soldered together, so we actually were able to sight through the pipe and see that our little spring was working. It actually is hugging the walls. Now, why are we doing that? Because Hugh thought of it, and we'll see Hugh later in this presentation. He was a member of the club who lives down in Tennessee. We're kind of regional. And he showed us his take on this design and had thought already of this idea of how to slow down the fuel as it's traveling down the walls. Because we're only talking, this is Homescale. In a commercial plant, these falling film evaporators are 20 feet tall. So here it is in my garage, and it's 4 feet tall. So I have to try to find some balance between the speed at which the fuel is falling down the walls and making sure that it's not there such a long period of time that it's going to kind of bake on and polymerize on account of heat, but still be there long enough to get the methanol out of it. So the wire really seems to be working well, and that's good because if the wire had not hugged the walls, everywhere it stuck out, it probably would have been a place for fuel just to drip straight down and go straight to the collection vessel and be totally untreated. So this is working well for us, and thanks to Dave for thinking of that kind of wire.
And we do go to great lengths to make it level, so that it's not tilting towards one side.
That's right, that's right. So then what's happening, as you can see, is as the fuel falls, then the outer walls, which are heated up to 180 degrees with heating tape, it's stuff that I got from, it's so easy to remember, heatingtapes.com. And the owner of heatingtapes.com is Harry. And Harry is wonderful, and he talks to you, and he helps you size your heating tape. So I told him all about my Variac and what I was doing, and he was briefly fascinated long enough to sell me the right stuff. And very nice person. And it's high watt mainly because the low watt stuff was going to be the wrong length for me. So I had to do a compromise between the wattage and the length, so that, and Harry knows about math too, so he can calculate spirals. So really that's quite a benefit for someone with a humanities degree. So you can see then with this heating tape wrapped around this copper pipe that the whole thing gets pretty uniformly hot once it's insulated. We discovered in our first test with it that we didn't yet have the insulation on. We just wanted to see if we could get fuel to flow through it. And we started with glycerol because we know glycerol. We've been recovering methanol from it for a while now. So when we started out, we didn't have the insulation on, and I have ceiling fans from the dumpster in my shop. So the air is moving around, and we could see that as the air moved, we'd get temperature variations. It was that sensitive, is my point. So adding the insulation, also from the dumpster, was very helpful, and it maintains temperature very well now. So then as you can see, the vapor goes up through the hole in the funnel and goes over to the condenser, and it's just another standard condenser, same as we always use. And it collects there. So what's interesting to me is temperature. Notice how, if I'm at 180 here, I have indicated on the slide that I'm condensing at only 140 degrees at the top of my column. And I am baffled by this. I'm hoping that there will be a scientist in the room who can explain this. I'm looking around at the scientists now, and hoping that you'll speak to me, because I don't understand. Normally with our pots still, we expect that we will start recovering methanol at 152 degrees at this point. And look, I'm getting it immediately, by the way. The minute that glycerin fell down that column, I had vaporization. It was really thrilling. And I believe that's it. Because here's the good news for Bob. Yes, it is 100% grade, at least for the glycerol. We haven't done enough tests to know that that's holding up throughout all of the choices that we have here. But we did recover enough methanol from the glycerol and test it with our B100supply.com hydrometer, and it was 100% grade.
I'm wondering, can you point exactly where you're measuring the temperature? Like the exact spot?
It's here.
Here, we can hold them up.
Camera's ready, everybody.
Okay.
Maybe have to hold that one.
Got the thermometer
I did not wet my pants.
And then the thermometer on the column.
Is the thermometer on the column measuring the temperature of the pipe or the temperature in the center of it?
Hopefully the center of it.
What?
We
So
put him
there
on
is
his
a
back
probe going inside.
and put the probe in there and tried to hold him very still so that the probe wasn't touching one of the walls.
Right, this thermometer, okay, this temperature gauge is from McMaster. This was one of the more expensive things. $44 and some cents from McMaster. It's a strap-on pipe thermometer. And so I had to pick out the proper range for it. And then this one is a pretty cheap one, but we've been using these on our condensers and they seem to be good. You can calibrate these here a little bit.
Yes, it's a stem thermometer.
Yeah, it's a
you can get
stem
the truck stuff, take your radiators.
And the stem,
And we've got our US.
the stem is probably going to about here on this one.
How cool is the water that's in your jacket?
Ambient temperature, which means on a hot day it's 95 degrees.
Well, that's the reason why I mean, copper is such a great conductor. By the time it reaches from that element right there to there, your ambient water temperature is cooling that up there, which is actually a good thing. I mean,
Well, this gets hot to the touch though.
well, it's hot to the touch, but I'm telling you right now.
You're saying that it's hot and it's cool enough even from
Yeah,
down here
your cooling
to
is
have
taking
reduced the
place all the
temperature
way up
here.
around the corner there.
Okay.
And that's where you're, I mean, that's
I
part of
believe
it.
you.
I
You
don't
know
know if it's all of
copper.
it, but I can tell you, being a plumber and hanging on to something and heating down here, that, just like that, it's hot up here.
Well, thank you. I hate mysteries. It's really cool to know the right answer to that. Okay, so even though the water is maybe relatively warm, it's just a differential. It's just enough difference of temperature that'll make it condense. And apparently it's, and I'm sure it must help to have this
See,
insulation.
what's really helping is that is actually bent down a little bit, and it might be an illusion to me, but that is actually bent down. And
It
so
is.
what's happening is it's probably already condensing, probably
In
about
here.
where your thermostat is, and is now turning to liquid. And again, that's coming into play because of your ambient temperature. The water
Okay.
is actually coming back up. and
Okay,
coming
that's
back.
cool. Because let me tell you what's going on under here, and I'm sorry it has to be covered. We gave some thought to opening it up for you, but this is that evil kind of insulation that really does get in your skin and hurt, and we just didn't think that was the right thing to do. So what's happening underneath here is there's a 90, and then I put on two 45s, street 45s, to just make a little
Well, that's good though. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, so you can get that running in that kind of essential out there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what's so exciting about that lower temperature is I do feel like we have a chance of operating this more safely, because when you're talking about leaving something unattended that's 350 degrees, that's pretty scary. You know, we actually don't leave things unattended. What we do is we don't monitor full time. Like, I'll put a timer on Tank Girl, and then I'll be doing other things, and I'll check on Tank Girl, but I won't stand there the whole time.
Can I ask you, what is the wattage of the heating tape you have on there now?
624.
624 kilowatts?
No, watts.
Okay.
And I'm operating it on the Variac, and my Variac it has gradations from 0 to 100, and during normal operation, in our tests so far, I'm operating it at 40%. Once because this tape will get a lot hotter than I allow it to get.
And about how long does it take for you to do your average run?
Well, I'll get to a little slide that says that.
Okay.
What's the return that goes back on the tank? Is that on the bottom?
This is about, yeah, let me show you. I mean, right now what we're doing is we're simply putting some tubing on the bottom, and it just falls straight out. Now, this is also one of the reasons why I think that it's doing a pretty good job, since Carl built a wonderful structure, pretty massive, to be able to brace this thing against and be able to mount it so that it's level. Level really matters with this. And I'm guessing, based on my ability, when I stick a 1-inch poly tube at the bottom here, clamp it on, and when I observe it, I can actually see the fuel sheeting on all the surfaces of that poly tube. So it really makes me happy, because I'm pretty sure it means that we're really actually getting a thin film down the whole length of this thing.
Is one pass enough?
That's what we aren't sure of yet. But
We've
here's what we
been
found.
doing this for like 2 weeks.
Right.
So I mean,
This is very new to us. Let me show you. I'm sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, on back to your other slide. You've got glycerol biodiesel comes from a pressurized tank.
Yeah, the tank is not pressurized yet. What we did in order to be able to conduct the experiments we've done so far, I'm going to show you on the next couple of slides. It looks very hokey, I admit it, but you remember, we're just starting to do this. Yes?
I was just going to comment on your the wire coil that you had on the inside there. in the chemical industry, a lot of times they'll use something, basically, it looks like a stainless steel screen, and just roll that up, slide it inside the pipe and let it swell up in there, and do a couple of laps of that.
What is it?
Stainless steel, like window screen?
Oh, just screen.
Yeah, and.
Is that actually what it is, a stainless steel window screen?
I don't know if it's window screen or not, but it's stainless steel.
Stainless steel
wire
screen.
Well, that would be good, because we know stainless steel would be ideal. I mean, this thing is copper, so the fact that Dave had the stainless steel with the copper cladding on it was nice, because at least we weren't introducing another metal.
Well, but the couple of benefits of that is that when you roll it up, it'll expand back out. And hold it.
Yeah.
And if you have like 2 revolutions on the inside there, plus with the weaviness in the wire, the oil will wick back and forth around there.
And that would, I think that actually would also be easier to build, quite honestly, because.
The spring was a little funny, trying to keep it coiled.
Yep.
And every time I moved and twitched, it would start to expand.
I know, and Dave and I, it was like working under an acrobat. We were just kind of, tell us what to do, tell us what to hold, tell us where to turn. So, yeah, I think that screen sounds like a really great idea. Okay, let's see. Look up there at the top. This will answer one question. We did not use a pressurized tank yet, but we think that's in the future maybe. Because remember, I don't know if you recall from the earlier slides, my settling / water wash tanks are, I call them the War of the Worlds tanks because they're high. I try to use gravity wherever I can. It's that whole energy in, energy out thing. So unfortunately though, this thing has to be pretty high up in the air. And as a result of that, I'm either going to have to pump up to it, or I'm going to have to pressurize the vessel that it's coming from. And Carl and I have been talking this over, and we're kind of leaning toward the idea of putting a little reservoir up here, you know, some permanent bigger version of this, in order to be able to pump up to it, and then just let the natural head push it down, as opposed to try to maintain a pressurized vessel. And one of the reasons for that thinking is because the minute you start talking about keeping things pressurized and regulated, you're adding some risk and you're adding some control complexity that is maybe not the direction we want to go because of our desire to keep things as simple as possible. So that's what we're kind of thinking about, but we don't actually know what's going to happen, to be honest with you. The other thing that we realize is kind of like, it seems like our whole thing is where to put the thermometer so you can see it. Because, you know, this is the position you could see it in if it were in its old configuration. You can see, here's tank row right here. And I can see that thermometer, that's eye level to me. And here we are almost 4 feet above that, or that's an exaggeration, 3 feet. But there it is way up in the air, and of course I can't see it without climbing on somebody, so that's pretty silly. So what I'm planning to do is, you know, I have those street 45s on the top of the evaporator right now. I'll just simply take one of those off and do a 45 down to a viewable level, and then finish the condensing at that lower level. Let's see what else can I say. I know the picture's a little dark, but here's the big cat area.
Well, you can talk more about the strap-on thermometer, like how, you know, it's going to depend, what it's reading is going to depend on how close it is to one of those coils. And so when Maud wrapped it, she was very careful to try to keep it from directly touching one of the coils. But then, so we don't know how accurate it is. I mean, it's 180, but 180 where? Is it 180 everywhere?
And what does that mean in relation to this whole height? I mean, part of the height, this thing is exactly centered in the 4 feet. So we don't really know where that thermometer needs to be.
Right. So in this case, Maud sort of took one for the team and bought really expensive things, and bought this very expensive thermometer and the heat tape and whatnot to try to design this. And then our goal, working together, then, is to come up with a way to reproduce this much more affordably.
Right. So what the investment I have in it so far is, I think this is $44 and change. And then, you know, this is just a couple bucks, this tiny thermometer at the top. The cost of the copper, the heating tape was $61, including shipping, which is not that bad. But here, the killer part is, this system is dependent upon this variac. Who else has a variac? Nobody has a variac. So what we have to try to do is figure out how can we properly size the heat source so that you don't need to have a variac. Yes, sir.
How did you fix that prototype thermometer at the top? Did you just drill a hole in an in-cab and
Yes.
solder it or something?
In fact, this shows it pretty well, even though this is the goofball one. We have a cap on the end, and then we drill it. I use RTV on mine. This is, I think, some other type of caulking, but it holds up to the heat quite well.
And the methanol vapors.
Right.
So you want something that's good for fixing cars. Good for that.
Mike, so your strap-on thermometer is the one that's halfway down your column. So so that is affixed to the outside of the pipe?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
one thought, just off the top of my head, is that if you cut a few more holes at different levels.
You could
okay?
plug it in.
Well, now what I'm thinking is those infrared temperature guns that are pretty cheap anymore, and you need to make a black spot flat so you don't get reflectivity, and you can hit it with a temperature gun. At least
That's a good idea.
those things are, they're like $30.
For experimenting, we'd like to know.
Yes, for experimenting, yes, exactly.
that's
Just
great.
hit it, but just, yeah, spray it with flat black paint or something so you get that reflectivity and.
I've got somebody
idea.
checking out, like these stem thermometers, our US Foods lady's gonna check and see if they have ones with a 90-degree on them.
That we
And
can
then would
strap
tape
on
those
a bunch of them.
And they're inexpensive enough that we could put 5 of them
Right.
on there.
Right. Paul?
Well, I was just gonna say that these little electronic, temperature deals that have a variance of about 5-8 degrees, and you know about where that's at, you can usually put those whatever and run a wire down, and you can choose whichever temperature you want it to, and if you want to get sophisticated, run it in so that it's feeding the computer, telling you number 1 is running this temperature, number 2 is running this temperature.
Where do you get those things?
Granger is a good place to start. Johnstone is a real good place. John, JOHNSTONE. I think they're nationwide, but I know they're regional out of Utah. They're here in Denver, I know.
And what are they called? Do they have an official name?
Yeah, they're a little temperature thing with a wire on it, electronic.
That's the kind of name I call things. Wait a minute, you're a professional. Tom?
The industry commonly uses type K thermocouples. They're dirt cheap. Thermocouple readers are a standard of the whole industry. You just do a hit for that, and we'll be together later.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm Tom. I've already begged Tom to help us because we don't have the knowledge in our little group to deal with these controllers, but we are smart enough to know that control is critical. And so we're very careful. In fact, you can see that, yes, we really did work with the fire extinguisher off the wall on our first test because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if we were going to have a problem. We didn't know if we could keep it from running away with us, quite honestly. So we just decided to have the fire extinguisher where we could grab it immediately. And we worked with it real close. This picture shows our very first test. We were very casual because we were just glad to get the damn thing on the wall. And you'll see that we went, we have to collect this stuff. And we shoved a graduated cylinder under there.
But at least we had the bottles resting on the floor this time. The day before, we were each holding a different bottle.
That's true.
And then who was going to grab the fire extinguisher?
I know, it was pretty exciting.
One of us was pouring and somebody had everything.
Yeah, we confess that we are sometimes goofballs, but we were very excited about this.
Exactly, it was.
Yeah. So when we did this first test, that's when we realized that our thermometer heights were stupid on the condenser. And then we also realized, you can see we're using a wrench here to tilt the graduated cylinder.
Well, and you can see just in the time lapse between those two pictures how much more of the glycerin's filled up the cylinder.
Yeah.
And at this point, we got a little concerned that it's going to slip out from under it.
Exactly, so it's kind of leaning on the fitting there and being supported also by the...
You could also use a brick or a rock.
But I have my wrench in, so...
That wrench is your doorstop, right?
Yeah, actually, it is my doorstop too. It's a very convenient wrench.
Harbor Freight wrench, right?
Yeah, that would be the cheesy variety. My neighbor, not the alcoholic animal hoarder, but the other one, the one who doesn't return tools, he has my good wrenches. So, that's what you get when you live in the city. One of the things I learned from our test number 1 is I actually was defeating the function of this thing. Remember how it's a hollow tube, right? You have to let that thing breathe or it can't push the methanol vapor up over to the condenser, right? Well, as we were being all excited and getting out the wrench and all that stuff, I know for a fact that tubing got in that glycerol, so I choked it. I did. So I realized that after the fact, and I thought, oh, well, we won't do it that way on test number 2. So we didn't. So here's a bunch of data. You know, after the excitement of the first couple of tests was over, Then we had that preliminary test that doesn't count, then we had test number 1, which we've shown you. We did another test with glycerol, because again, we know it, so we thought, okay, what happens if we do that twice? And then before we came here, we managed to do 1 test with biodiesel. These are tiny tests, we know that, and so, you know, things may change, but the exciting part is we're getting high-grade stuff. Now, is it worth it? That's where we're going to have to calculate our ROI, but for those of us who are doing this, putting, you know, environmental concerns at the top of our list, you know I'm going to do this, so it's really, the ROI is less important to me. Return on investment, I'm sorry. One of the things, though, that was very interesting on the biodiesel, yes, I agree, this is 1 tiny sample, only 2 liters, but we got back 5% by volume. So that was impressive, and I don't know if we'll reproduce that, we'll see.
So when you talk about ROI, do you mean in financial terms or in energy terms?
Actually, that we should think about it in both ways.
So, because energy is what, ROEI, return on energy input or invested? So they're both, and they both make some sense.
Right.
I like your $2 bulkhead fit.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice bulkhead fitting.
It says you preheated at 70% for 4 minutes. I mean, are you preheating in that 2-liter plastic bottle? Or?
No, the tube itself,
So turning the tape.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
So did you heat the glycerol before at all, or you just ran it in there at ambient temperature?
Right.
But it's something you could do, or it's fresh from the processor.
Yeah, ideally you do this immediately afterwards and pump
On
it
the
over.
previous slide, it said preheated to 190 degrees.
But the glycerin, the biodiesel was.
That might have been the first one.
Oh, the first slide? Yeah, they're preheat to 190.
Well, that's what we did, because we didn't know what we were doing.
But you're not talking about the glycerin, you're talking about the heat.
Yeah, we're heating the cover. And of course, it's cooling then as soon as we add the
Glycerol.
Right, so we knew we wanted to try to operate at 180, so we thought, well, it's gonna cool, so we'll overshoot it a little bit. We didn't know how much to overshoot it, so we thought we'd pick 190.
But if you heated your glycerol up to say 130 or something before you dumped it in there to just make it all that.
Well, see, I wouldn't want to put that energy in there, quite frankly, because immediately, as soon as this thing gets going, that glycerol is flowing. So I'm not sure that there would be an advantage to that, and there certainly would be a risk as well. So, but as Terri was saying, though, I think the ultimate goal, you know, with my War of the Worlds cone bottom tanks, what I'd love to do is be able to make a batch. When I'm done, immediately stick it over in the tank and let it settle for some reasonable amount of time, and then recover in series. Just go ahead and take care of the
Inside
glycerol
your
right
War
there.
of the World tank, so it's retaining some warmth.
Yeah, so it'll still be warm. Won't be that warm. Probably be more like 110 or something like that.
Ma, do you think the same system would work if you had a tank and preheated the glycerol to say 200 degrees Fahrenheit and just dripped it in as hot glycerol, insulated it, let the column get hot from dripping it through?
Oh, instead of using the heating tape?
Instead of using a heating, just preheated it, almost like a flash evaporator. But if you can even drop it, you can even go higher, like 210 or something, 220, and drop it right into the column.
I don't know, we'd have to try it. What do you guys think?
Well, if you heat your glycerol to 220, you're gonna be blowing out methanol before you do it.
Right, that's what
No,
I
in a
was
tank, in a sealed tank, so that it can't go anywhere. And
I
then
see what you're saying.
you can drop it into the
What's the
column.
benefit of that, John? I mean, what
Well,
are you thinking?
just without a variac, you could just use it regular old
Well,
plug-in.
we're gonna investigate some other heating element options.
You could use the hot water loop, you have it.
Well, we
We have that too. Wait, let's go to more slides.
Just a real quick question. How do you know you're getting 100% grade methanol?
Because my hydrometer tells me so.
And she measured everything. I had to work the nights she was doing these two, but Carl was helping. You guys measured everything, and they came back up to 100% volume, and so they had full recovery of everything.
Yeah,
But
Carl makes me feel good because he really is a real scientist, so
And I just
it's
want to
not
point out,
just
though,
me.
I mean, this is not quick.
Right, notice that,
That
oh!
that was only 2 liters.
This is very slow right now, right? This is glycerol, and it took an hour to get 2 liters through. It took 33 minutes to get 2 liters of biodiesel through. So one of the reasons why we started thinking about pressurization or this reservoir or some other way to maintain more head up there is because this is really slow. The other thing I need to do is just take apart the thing and see if I can shave down that little upside down funnel and just try to understand how much of a gap do I need. I don't know.
Because it's a compromise then between residence time in the tube in contact with the heat.
That's
so
right.
you don't want it to go too quick. You want it to go slow, but maybe not an hour for every 2 liters.
Or a taller column, you
Right.
could use more flow because you have more.
And then eventually figure out ways to automate it and have a safety kill switch, just like the other ones.
You can be spraying it hot as well. So in other words, if you keep.
We've got that too. Wait, there's more. Yes.
Have you considered packed columns instead of thin film?
No, we hadn't yet. Tell us about that.
Pretty much all you're trying to do is just increase the surface area.
Uh-huh.
So what you do is essentially make a continuous distillation column where you have, pretty much what I've done this before is just shove a bunch of like steel,
Bearings.
like steel wool, but they're the thicker steel wool, not really fizz up the works down real quick. Like the good stuff for scouring pans. You should fill that up in there. You increase the surface area even more. So all you're doing right now by going from pot to thin film, you increase the surface area by a huge amount. Increase the surface area even more, you get more distillation happening.
So could we pack this evaporator with that then?
Yeah, pack that evaporator up. You could do that as a test. And I
But that
would
would
probably
result-
remove your restrictor from there though.
Wouldn't that result in condensation in your, I mean, what you're talking about is like a refractive column, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
See, and this isn't a refractive column, this is actually the evaporator, if I'm
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, you should have the
Vapor go up.
yeah.
You'd have to
Right,
use
so how
that
would
in
the
the
vapor
condenser part.
escape then if I had a pack like that?
No, you're doing the same thing. It's just increasing the surface area.
So it would still rise?
It would still rise up.
Okay.
Yeah, and definitely want to make sure, if you do want to assess, make sure there's a gap between your packing and that center tube where the vapor goes up, because otherwise you have liquid right below that.
Wait, what were you saying about the packing?
So have the packing lower.
So I would
Yeah, a
start
little bit
the
lower.
packing
Yeah,
down?
start a little lower so you don't have any liquid and training up there.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Okay, good.
So what is to keep the, I mean, what happens if we are vaporizing too soon? Is it cooling down again and it just moves further down or what? I mean.
If it's vaporizing too soon, it will fall back down in the biodiesel and I'll get biodiesel with
Get them
methanol.
all the same temperature. Like, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
But you'd have to
I'm just trying to
have
increase the surface area here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not.
But you'd have to keep those copper scouring pads at a temperature that was hot enough to evaporate the, right?
Right, because in the evaporator, we're evaporating it, we're shoving the vapor into the other.
Is that a problem or not? Would that be a problem or not? Or because, see, let's say that you're only making it halfway down and you've reached the temperature that the methanol is vapor. How are we getting it down to the center?
We don't want it down, we want it, in our case, up. Although in another example, she's got a picture of where the guy is collecting it at the bottom and taking it off.
Right, so we want the vapor to go up, but we have another design where we want the vapor to go down. So let's show you, I'm going to show you, how long is this session going?
You've got about 7 minutes. Long as you need.
Oh my gosh, look you guys, I have to show you this other stuff. Okay, all right, these are some things we learned and I think they pretty much have come up in our conversation and even more stuff has come up. So kind of expand down there and you see what we're talking about. But I want to show you Hugh's mini commercial evaporator. This, Hugh did a bunch of research on how, you know those 20-foot long ones that are in the plants? He wanted to know what that design was like. And so, even though it's kind of counterintuitive to somebody like me, it's closed-headed. Same idea. You still have the upside-down funnel kind of concept or some way to spread the fuel to the walls of the pipe. But instead of allowing the vapor to go up and get to the condenser, you actually contain it and force it to go out the bottom. And you have a separate little column here to take it over to the condenser. So how Hugh, and I think this has a lot of possibilities, but what we have to find out is a good idea for a casing here. For his prototype, Hugh has assembled a casing, a water jacket, made out of paint cans that are JB welded together. And it's good for a prototype, but it's not good for a long run.
And he had also just put this together like 2 days before he came up to an open garage.
Right, and he drove all the way to Tennessee to be with us. It was very cool. But see what's exciting about this is he's achieving a nice even temperature and it's affordable. He's just using a standard heating element and he's controlling it with a stove heating element. So he's got control and he's got cheapness. What he doesn't have yet is a more feasible way to scale up. His is kind of miniature. And it actually, the whole thing probably needs to scale up. But what he's got here is the way that the biodiesel leaves, I'll show you on the photograph in a second, is via a little loop of copper. That's Hugh, by the way. He was here last year. If you were here last year, you remember Hugh. And so, oh, I wish this weren't so dark, darn it. Can you see, this is where he showed us how, he had access to aluminum wire, so that's how he coiled his wire. Oh, that helps, thank you. This is actually how the copper part of his evaporator looks. Can you tell, see this thing coming, the takeoff on the side here, that's the one for the vapor. This other takeoff is for the biodiesel itself. So this is based on the idea of a commercial falling film evaporator. And you can see he has this electric stove controller. Terry, can you remember what this is? He has these are photographs that we posed around here. Can you remember what this is?
Is he just heating up the water around?
Yeah.
Instead of using a.
So he's got a water
Not
jacket
the
with a hot
heating
water
system.
heater element.
Great idea.
Yeah, is that a good idea?
And Dave and I were brainstorming on the way here about different things you could use for the water jacket and the element, and
Like PVC pipe. Why couldn't you use
except for the
PVC?
heating elements. You gotta,
Not with that heating element. I wouldn't want to do
Well, I mean, if you heat it in a separate thing and then piped your hot water into there, you could have 160, 180.
You mean like have a reservoir and circulate it?
Yeah.
So you'd have to have a pump
Like, just
or
like your
something?
condenser uses cool water, but use a hot water heater jacket with a 4-inch PVC pipe. So you're running 100.
Okay, well
I mean,
that's.
I don't know, I don't
but we
know.
were also thinking about you could use a block heater instead of.
Okay, and what he found is to get his biodiesel out, he had to put a little loop in here. You know how underneath the sink you have a little J bend to keep your drain from glugging? Well, that's why he added that little loop. He was having a problem with glugging. So Terry's giving us a close-up of, ta-da! He has a little spray head on the inside. So instead of the upside-down funnel, he's got the little spray. Ah! See, there's more than one way to skin the cat. So this is the fully, see, you can see.
Because cats make great bios.
Here it is, fully assembled. Kind of ignore the dead chairs. This is my back shop, the back of my shop. So here we have the water jacket, and this is the component that Terry he had pulled it out so Terry could show the little spray head. So right now on this prototype, he's getting the biodiesel in this way from the top.
Is that pumped in, gravity fed, or?
Right now it's gravity fed on the prototype, I'm sure. And then this is his condenser. So see, everything is inside that extra little stem that the vapor comes out of is inside that water jacket. So it's staying warm all the way up until it exits the water jacket and comes over here and has a simple little column here.
This whole assembly, this outlet right here, is all contained in the paint can.
Right. And then the little outlet here is this, right there. So that's what Hugh's been working on. Now here's another one. This is a guy on Infopop. We don't know this guy, but one of our goals is to try to use solar as much as we can.
And this is what I really wanted to do.
Right,
And
and
I were
Luther-
brainstorming the whole way here about it, and
Yeah.
then he found these images online.
And Luther Goldseth, from one of our club members from down in Arkansas, is also working on solar stuff, and he is working on this. Oh, I didn't even do it. He is working on this one as well. And you can see that there's a heated surface at an angle, so it's a whole sheet to expose a whole lot more of the fuel. And in the case of Ruby's design, he's got like what looks like a little skylight cover fitted over this box and lets the sun take care of it. And this is what it looks like today. Now, if you go on to Infopop and read what he has to say about it, he's thinking it'll work better for him if he actually replaces this plexiglass cover with a stainless steel cover.
Which you can't see through. I mean, we were thinking about using glass, which is nice to see in there and see what's going on. But I think the methanol is going to etch the flex.
Yeah, yeah. So those are some choices on how to handle this polyfilm evaporator. Real quick, I started naturally because I really don't like my job, so I did this at work. Thinking about how does this affect your process? If this works, do you have to rethink anything? Because here we're talking about wouldn't it be great if you could immediately make your fuel, let it settle for a small but reasonable amount of time, and then immediately recover from your glycerol and immediately recover from your biodiesel while both of them are still warm, and then immediately complete your process. So what does that take? And I actually worked this whole thing out, and what I discovered was that I was going to have to reorganize my shop, which thankfully Carl is very strong and can carry things. And so the way it would work for me is I would be working left to right, and my process would be over here, my War of the World settling tank here. That would be, I'd be drawing off my fluids out of that into the, maybe there's going to be a reservoir above this evaporator. You can see, this is actually how I worked out how to position the condenser. And what I'd have to, because my full batch is a 30-gallon batch, I'd have to get a 30-gallon drum to catch my biodiesel, put a pump on it in order to get it into a wash tank, and then wash it up. Now, for those of you who've been following the conversation about getting rid of methanol in order to make your soap drop out, this opens up some new possibilities for me where washing is concerned. So that's another reason I'm kind of excited about this, because this may mean that, you know, less water is going to have to be involved, and that's always good. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that could work out. So we have a lot of work to do, but even though our current work is still pretty preliminary, we wanted to share this with you because we think it has a lot of possibilities, and we're really grateful for all the ideas you all have shared, because that's going to help us move ahead on this. And I think it's pretty evident to us that this is probably going to allow us to eliminate the hot still design and go into something that is going to yield for us a higher quality methanol. The trick is going to be, how do we do this in a timely manner? I'm sorry?
101% then?
Well, we were only getting 95 before. And the fact is that we all are very good at having dry oil. But if we didn't have dry oil, that 95% would be a problem for us. And that's probably why it was a problem for you at Rocky Mountain, because you probably didn't have as much control over your oil as we do on a small scale with ours.
It's really more about the conversion that you get with the water and methanol. So if you're aiming at ASTM spec level conversion or better, it's difficult to do that with methanol that's
Got water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because our feedstock was typically, less than half of 1%.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Sam?
I wanted to make an observation. I'm sure most of you know who the company Lurgi is. They're the premier biodiesel plant manufacturer in the world, supplied in Austria. Their method for methanol recovery is they presume that all the methanol comes out of the biodiesel in the first water wash. So they mix their first water wash with the glycerol and use that mixture to remove all of the glycerin, or the methanol. Sorry.
So they dilute their methanol, their glycerol, with their first wash water, which at that point contains the methanol from the biodiesel.
Right, that contains all of the excess methanol. And part of the idea of that is that if you remove the methanol from the biodiesel too soon, then you can cause a reverse reaction if there are any triglycerides left, or if there is also any catalyst present, then it can produce excess free fatty acids or triglycerides in the biodiesel. So to eliminate that risk, they don't heat the biodiesel any further once it goes through the reaction, the transfer. So it only gets purified after that. It's not heated in any stage of the process. All of the methanol goes in the wash water from the first wash and the glycerin, and that mixture then goes through all of the methanol recovery.
So what technique do they use for their methanol recovery from that diluted glycerol?
They use either a distillation column, or in smaller plants they use thin film evaporators.
So we're going the right direction then. So maybe we need to rethink the process.
Go back to the water wash thing.
Right.
But you touched on one of the questions over there, which was whether or not we wanted to separate. Well, no, one pass, no separation. Whether or not you would run the biodiesel and the glycerin back together or separate them, and because of the reversibility of the reaction, the answer of course is no.
Yeah.
We would separate, and in fact, Maud and I have discussed actually setting one of these up, each for the glycerol and one for the biodiesel, so we wouldn't have to clean it out.
But just on that point, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you get your separation area, so you've got the glycerol underneath and the biodiesel on top, you've still got a lot of glycerin in your ester phase, okay? And so that's where you're going to get potentially that backwards reaction when you start taking the methanol out again. And so what Lurgy's doing by putting the water through, you're getting that free glycerin out of the ester phase, so that when you remove the methanol, you're not going to have the ability to go back and make triglycerides, among other things.
It seems like though, if you're doing recovery from that diluted water glycerol, you're gonna have to use a refractive column to get a decent percentage, otherwise you're gonna get water in your methanol.
I don't know, we'll have to experiment, but I like that idea of adding the water and running it through this.
There's water in it anyway.
In
Water is glycerin anyway, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, that's why we got 95% when we were just
Otherwise,
doing
it's right
glycerin.
thinking, but there's already water there.
Oh, I got you. I didn't know.
On your slide that you had with the solar collector on it, and you were asking about the plastic or glass or stainless cover on that. If you have a piece of glass on the top, you'll perform much better than with the plastic on it and much better than with stainless steel, unless the stainless steel is in direct contact with the oil. And so you have to fill that chamber, you know, between the bottom and the top with oil in order to have good contact with it. Otherwise, it'll just be radiant heating that way. But if you use a piece of like low iron glass, which is what they use in solar collectors, that's probably got a transmissivity of 0.8. And with low iron glass, you'll be at about 0.95. And so you're getting 15% more solar energy into that. If you then have a black material would be best for the surface that you're working on. And then again, maybe put a screen on that to slow down the flow and let it warm up to a hotter temperature. You can probably increase your evaporation pretty dramatically.
Yeah, you could probably stretch
Because
the
otherwise, the
screen.
heat transfer from the metal, right, is you'd have to have liquid to get good heat transfer. The problem is if you have that, you have no headspace to collect any vapors.
That's exactly right.
So the glazing can let the light come through. And again, if you have a black surface, you're going to get the heat generated there, right? But and then another thing would be to have that surface perhaps going like this, so you get more
Yeah,
time.
I think a screen or something like that would work. But you've got a dark, I mean, the glycerol is dark, the biodiesel is lighter. So you may not need too much coloring a dark surface with it for the glycerol. It would definitely help for the biodiesel though.
And if your ambient outdoor temperatures were reduced, it's going to help as well. For those poor people living in cold climates and trying to get sun outside, right?
Well, no, you want the higher ambient temperatures.
Okay, no, what I'm saying is that if you were running biodiesel through this thing that we're sort of envisioning here, and it's 10 degrees outside, okay, it's gonna be better off because if you have a dark surface underneath the biodiesel inside that collector.
Right. Yes.
In other words, as I'm saying, is that ambient temperature goes down outside, the albedo of the material underneath is going to become more important.
That's true, and insulate the bottom of it then.
This one does that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Terry was reminding me that this one actually, the prototype on this picture, actually right now has a heating element, but it's proposed to be solar. But we're thinking of it as
We
an
would like to
example.
build one that's, and in my mind, it looks kind of like the thing that you use for, and I cannot say this word, but where you get pure water back out of salt water. So you heat it up. Yeah, I can't say it. And then what would be the methanol vapors would condense on the glass surface and run down and collect.
Okay.
And we haven't built this yet. I mean, we were just brainstorming about it.
Right, John?
Yeah, I was wanting to ask a question about, getting back to the pot still idea. I saw a design, I think it might have been Graham Laming who did it, talking about, it was a homemade venturi, and then a recirculated pump on the pot. So basically, the pot is built up kind of like a recirculating, pump mixer. But then just before it goes back into the pot, there's an air line. There's a venturi in there tied to an air line that's connected to the basically the bottom of the condenser. And the idea is that venturi causes a suction which sucks air through that tube, which is connected to the bottom of the condenser, which is connected to the top of the pot. So it's just the pumping of the glycerol back and through here causes a flow of air that pulls the air through the condenser. And I was just wondering what y'all, if you were familiar with that idea, and what you thought about, because you're saying when you pump it, you're just putting all the fumes.
When I pumped it in my
that
experience,
down
nobody
to
else.
Explanation of how
glycerol.
that's set
And
up.
what do you
I've got
think
my
about that
processor set up that way.
as a way of dealing with
I haven't
that?
tried it out until next week.
Because I built one of those and haven't finished the product yet, but just, it's a pretty interesting idea. Just took a copper tee, like a sweat tee, and then put in 2 pieces of cardboard in the pipe and filled it full of solder, and then drilled out the solder and then drilled a smaller hole through the top. So it creates basically a constriction in the flow with a small little 1/8" hole. And I was able to pull about 2 or 3 feet of water in a 3/4 inch ID hose. With
I made mine
with
with a black iron tee.
But that was with water though, so I don't know if it'll have the same efficiency pumping glycerol, which is thicker, but just as a test, I mean, it pulls a pretty good vacuum.
And I was just gonna have fuel going through it, not glycerol. I was just gonna use regular hot still
Yeah.
glycerol. And I think I'm set up so I could do both of them simultaneously.